Welcome to the Spotlight on the Expert Interview Series. We're here today talking to soul-nourishing, heart-centered, world-changing businesswomen who've gone from best-kept secret through to world-class experts. Today I'm talking to Chantelle Adams, who is a professional speaker, a speech stylist, and a courage igniter. Welcome, Chantelle.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. I love your title, Speaker, Speech Stylist, and Courage Igniter. That sounds like a fantastic job that you'd enjoy going to every day.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us about what got us to, or got you to this point in your career to doing what you're doing?
For sure, for sure. So I've always been speaking, well, not always, but, from the time I was little, I've been on stages, I've been performing. I love to be in that kind of spotlight zone. But later on, I realized that I could really use my voice to make a difference and make a positive impact. And so that's where I started to do some speaking. But the kind of pivotal change for me that led me to do the work that I'm doing now was when I actually lost a very dear friend to breast cancer about 5 years ago. And it was in that loss and in sitting at her funeral and just hearing the words of her oldest son. She was very young and had 4 young boys. And so as he was talking and he was sharing about how she was fighting up to the very last moments, and she didn't want to go because she had so much left that she wanted to do, and that she wasn't done fighting because she wasn't done living. And in that moment, as I was sitting there, with tears streaming down my face, I realized something just hit me, and it felt like the wind got knocked out of me, and I realized that I was alive and breathing, and yet I wasn't truly living.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I didn't know why, because I had a great life and a great husband, a great family, lived in a beautiful place. So I didn't understand it. And as I dug deeper, I realized at the root of everything, every decision I made, everything that I did or didn't do in my life was a nasty 4-letter word, fear. And fear was what was keeping me from really, really living. And so I wrote my fear list. And I got out a pen, and in my friend's honor, I vowed that from this day on, if I tapped into fear and I was feeling fear, I would push through it, and I would do everything that scared me. And so on my was tons of stuff, right, like skydiving and dancing in a Latin dance competition and everything that I had ever wanted to do but was too scared to do. And so I just wrote this down, and I started checking things off. And the pivotal moment came when a friend called me up, and she said, "Do you want to go skydiving?" And I knew it was on my list. It was actually the first thing I wrote down. And yet I'm terrified of heights. And so I'm like, okay, let's do this.
That's amazing.
And I jumped out of that. Yeah, but it was really about, I knew I needed a bigger why, right, to get out of that.
Yeah.
And so I decided to fall 10,000 feet to raise $10,000 to build a school in Nicaragua. And at this time, I was professionally speaking, and I was doing my speaking business, but this courage thing took on a life of its own. And we were able to raise that money, and I got 60 amazing women to write a book together. We did all this in like 6 weeks. It was crazy.
Wow.
And I knew in that moment that it was the courage piece that I needed to bring to the world, and that's where I started the Courage Revolution. And from there, it's kind of evolved and changed a little bit, and I know we'll get more into that, but that was really the jumping off of jumping out of an airplane.
That's
and literally
huge. That's a huge why, isn't it, to move you forward? And I completely hear what you're saying, like you're living life but not necessarily fully living life. And while you're talking about your friend's funeral, it gave me, the hairs on my arm were rising. And it's obviously you're a very passionate and driven woman, and I'm so excited that you are doing this not only for everybody else but also for yourself. That is fantastic.
Yes, for sure, for sure. Yeah, you have to. That's one thing that I always live by, and we'll talk probably more about, is just making your why bigger than your fear in all elements of your life.
Okay, so Chantelle, you're obviously a very passionate and driven and motivated woman. I know that you're helping kids in schools, you're helping women with their business skills and teaching through your Centre Stage programs. And I know that you're also focused on giving back to the world, that you're a mother of 3, and that you are a mentor to thousands. So tell us, what's going on in your world right now? What are you doing?
Well, yes, I am. I'm delivering about 20 assemblies for kids this month coming up, and so we're talking all about responsibility and taking responsibility for in a lot of different ways. So that's exciting. I'm doing Center Stage, but I'm also planning and getting everything organized for Center Stage Live coming up in June, which is exciting, and it's my live event where just 15 ladies come. They get all their demo videos, all that great stuff. And then I'm also preparing and planning for my Shine Live event, which is my first big event, conference style, in September. So there's a lot of kind of moving pieces right now, but it's all fun and exciting and loving it all.
That's great. That is huge. It's a lot going on. You're a busy lady. So one of the reasons that I was really interested in talking to you today is because over the last 12 months, I've really noticed a change in your business. You know, I've noticed in your website, I've noticed in your programs, I've noticed the connection even between your audience and how it's just all just stepped up a level, like a whole other level. And I have no doubt that this was a conscious thing because it wasn't just a small, it was great moves. And it looks fantastic, by the way. I'm loving it.
Thank you.
So can you tell me more about the process and the journey about how you've come to do this?
Absolutely, and I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's kind of evolved on its own naturally and organically, and then also some conscious decisions as well. Right. So I do feel like every time I've delivered my Center Stage program, or every time I've done something new where I put it out, you know, I've up-leveled myself, I've up-leveled my marketing, I've taken that next step and tried to improve every time and tried to just, you know, be able to put that next best thing out there. And so in that sense, yes, like just recently when I did my last Center Stage Live, I had everyone getting their headshots and their new photo images and all that part of the package, and I thought, I need to do that too. And so I hired the photographer and the videographer, and I find that as I start to work with more people and see the options that are out there and how people can do such amazing work, like the videographer is amazing, and he's right here in my community, and so we've connected, and now I can hire him. I have my makeup artist on call, and that she makes me look beautiful, and then of course photographer as well. And so I have this little team now that I can call on and that I feel comfortable with and that are really making me look the part that I want to be portraying and being in the world and really up-leveling myself. So there's a little bit of both, of like conscious, yes, I need to up-level these pictures, I need to get my new website, those kinds of choices, but also that unconscious of it just snowballing and moving in action and just taking action, and wherever it's kind of flowing and where it's taking me, I've just kept going with it, making those decisions along the way. Yes.
And do you think that your confidence has grown as well while you've been doing this? You know, knowing that you must look and feel fantastic and have all these professionals helping you and...
Absolutely, absolutely. I find that every time you face fear, every time you put yourself out there in a bigger way, every time you up-level yourself, your thinking, your programs, whatever it is, it grows you in confidence as well. And it gives you more confidence to do that again and again. So it is that kind of stepping stones, right, that we go through.
Yeah. And you and I have a similarity in our business as well, is that we talk about courage and getting outside of your comfort zone and doing things. And my personal mission this year is to help 1,000 people step up to a better version of themselves. And I can see, you know, you're a great example of doing that. And my example has come from, you know, my travel experiences and being outside my comfort zone all those times in different situations over the last 20 years. But then I wasn't doing it in my business. you know, I wasn't stepping up to that extra step in my business. And I can see that not only in what you were talking about, but yeah, your website looks gorgeous. Your videos that you made and your photos, they're all like, they're great personal branding. So was that a conscious personal branding choice? Was that something that you did and created, or did that happen organically?
I think that my brand is still evolving, and I'm still rolling with it. I think there's always been pieces of it that I've carried through in all branding, and I've started to see branding as a much bigger thing. When I first started, it was like what colors and what fonts, and that was more the focus, whereas now I feel branding is more about the feeling you create, the personality that you are, the presence that you bring. And so in my materials and things, even in my pictures, I remember the photographer, I said, I don't want to be posed. I want to just naturally be me, and I just want you just to snap away, and we're going to catch the essence of who I am. Awesome. And so that's really important for me. And then also part of it was whenever I'm doing these kinds of things with branding, that I really feel like I'm really thinking about my one. So I'm really thinking about the women I've worked with, and I'm thinking about them as I'm looking into the camera, as I'm looking into the lens, as I'm posing or thinking. I think of them, and I think about how I want to help them, and I think about those things, and it almost brings that more of that emotion into those pictures and into those videos and things as well. So yes, it's definitely something that I ponder and think on, but it's also really evolved to this place of branding is so much more than just the colors and fonts you use.
Absolutely. It's so much more than a website, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So what was I going to ask you? Another change that I'd noticed over the last 12 months was that you've had some changes in your actual product and what you're selling. It's, I guess before I was noticing a lot more business advice and help, and it seems that people were just wanting to do the speaking with you. It seems, well, that's what it appears to be to me. That's where they're getting the most from you, and you are inspiring them. Is that what has happened? Is it that they've been like, this is what we want from you, Chantelle, or have you decided to go that way?
Absolutely. So when I launched the Courage Revolution, I was really focused on courage. I really believe, and I still believe, that courage is the foundation of a successful business and a successful life. And I see how courage and speaking go together. I see you need to have courage to speak up and share your message on stages and in the world. And so I saw the connection, but I really had a crazy immediate download. I've never had that before, and now I've had several, but where I just had inspiration hit, and I'm like, center stage. I knew the name. I sat in my car. It was after Zumba. And so whenever I have these creative things, it's usually when I'm active and doing that. So I had just been at Zumba, and I walked out to my car, and it was like, boom. I had this inspiration for this program, and I wrote it down in 20 minutes, like the whole outline. This is what I'm going to teach. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I can, have in each module. Like, it was crazy.
Wow.
And so I needed to launch it. Now, I had just been launching the Courage Revolution, and so I did a beta run of Center Stage, and I kind of left it. And I thought, okay, that was really great. That was awesome. But I really want to do Courage. And I did this launch, and it was like crickets. So it was called The Courage to Fly in Business. Yeah. And I thought, it's amazing. I knew it was going to do really well, and I still love it. I still love the idea, and one day I'm going to do it. But it was crickets, and I was like, oh, well, what's going on? So I needed to make a choice. And it wasn't that I was quitting on that, but I'd already started to design it and all that, and I had it ready, and I was ready to move forward with this Courage to Fly in Business program. But I thought, you know what? Center Stage is done. It was successful. It was awesome. I'm just going to test this out. So I put that out there, and it was like right away, that launch, that official launch, was like a 10K launch, and I was blown away. So so it's about listening. It's about testing things out. It's about really understanding what people want from you, just like you said. And I've seen how I've tied the two together beautifully,
Yeah.
And I still feel this pull to go back to courage a little more, but I think it's all in timing as well.
Yeah.
And another thing is everything I've done has come from my customers, really. When I did center stage, then I would tell them they needed their demo video and their headshots and their one sheet, and I would outline it and tell them exactly what they needed. But people were like, but how do I get that? If I don't have a speaking gig, how do I get the videos? And so then that's where I'm like, well, I'll give it to you.
Okay.
I'll create live, and you can come, and I'll videotape you, and I'll create the demo video, and then you'll have it. Or so everything I've created, and then 10K product in a week was same thing. It was just came from them saying, well, now what's our program? What do we launch from the stage? What do we share from the stage? So it's been this natural progression of I didn't know I was going to do Center Stage Live until they asked for it, really.
And we were talking about your branding before and creating it, but so much of it, yes, is about what you want, but you need to be listening to what your customers want as well. So you've obviously done that beautifully.
Yes.
So you're obviously passionate about public speaking, and it appears to come to you naturally. But as you would be well aware, it's actually a huge fear of so many people. So many people have fear about standing in front and standing on a stage, or even talking to a small group. And there's a great skit, I don't know if you've heard it, done by Jerry Seinfeld. I'll just read it out to you. He says, according to most studies, people's number one fear is public speaking. Number two is death. Death is number two. Does that sound right? This means the average person, if you go to a funeral, you're better off in the casket than doing the eulogy.
That's awesome.
That's a great one, isn't it? But tell me, how do people overcome the fear, and how do you help them with that? Because fear is a very real thing, and some people have bigger amounts of fear than others. What do you do with this?
For sure. So the first thing I really tell people is that fear is just energy. It really is just energy. And starting to see fear as a good thing, because I get nervous every single time. I was nervous before this interview. I get nervous before I speak. And I have those same feelings of fear, but I see it in a positive way, because I know if I'm feeling those nervous feelings, it means I care. It means I want to do a really good job, and I want to be at my best. And so I've always said, if I don't feel fear, then I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. That's kind of my post. And so having people hear that, you know what, I've delivered 800 speeches in 5 years. I've done a lot of speaking, and every time I'm nervous. Kind of puts it into perspective. And then really helping them to see it in that positive light, that you actually get people to nickname their fear. So my nickname is Twitter-pated, because it's very similar to the feelings I had when I was dating my husband, and I would get the butterflies, and I get the sweaty palms, and all those same physical kind of feelings would come up when we were about to meet, or he was about to call. And I noticed that, and I thought, why in that instant were those feelings positive? And I saw them as a really exciting thing, and yet when I was about to take the stage, most of the time people see that as the negative feeling, right? And so get people to nickname it and make it a fun name, a great name that actually shows that fear is really just a feeling, an energy that's helping to prepare you to do your best work, and also is showing you that something exciting that's about to happen.
Right.
So it's that reframe.
Yeah, so it's reframing, putting a new perspective on it.
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing that I mentioned kind of in my story that really applies here is making your why bigger than your fear. So why do you want to be on that stage? Why do you want to share your story? Why do you want to share your message? And really tapping in, making it bigger. It's like, how are you going to change lives? How are you going to make a difference because you're having the courage to share what you have to share? And that goes hand in hand with really focusing on your one. And so I really talk a lot about your one. And every time before I go out to speak, I always have that in my mind, that if I can touch one life out of the hundreds that are there, If I can touch one life, then my work is done. Then that's my purpose.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I want to touch many, but if I focus in on that one, and when you do that, when you realize that there is someone that needs what only you can share, that needs you to share it,
yeah,
that will change their life because of something you say, when you go in with that, it's not about you.
Yeah.
It's about them.
Yeah.
And so that takes the ego out of it. And if you take the ego out of it, then there's not as much fear. Because it's not about if I fall on my face or I forget what I do or blah, blah, blah. There's a bigger why, and it's about them.
Yeah. I love that. That just seems to make the fear not as big. Instead of thinking, okay, I'm here to inspire these 200 people, and how am I going to inspire these 200 people? But saying, okay, I'm here to inspire, if I can make a difference in one person's life, that really, it takes a load off your shoulders, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And so those are like the key emotional kind of ones. And then, of course, there's practicing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always stress not memorizing, and so we talk about like having a framework and knowing your main points and the main things you want to share, but really going from the heart and knowing that you know your stuff, you know your message, you know your story, and so if you go in there just being able to share and not have to worry about I have to have it said just perfectly, that you share from the heart, you're open to inspiration, you're open to being spontaneous and really giving what the audience needs, but there's also not as much pressure on you to get it just right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so do you suggest to people that they actually write their speech out and then create just a framework, or do they only just use a framework and speak from the heart right from the beginning?
It's really individual, and so some people love to write, and they want to write it all out so they get it in their minds, and we always start with the framework, and then they can write it out, and then they go back to the framework. But a lot of people also, that gets overwhelming to write it all out. That's me. I don't do well with writing, and so I say to just speak it out, right? Like, so get your framework and then just practice by just talking to yourself in the car or talking to yourself in the mirror when you're getting ready. So just taking that time just to really talk it out and make sure that you kind of have that flow in your mind and you feel confident.
Yeah. And yeah, like you said, everybody's different. And I've had experiences where I have written things out and then I've gotten to the end and there's a statistic that says that the majority of people give up, I think it's in like the last 11% of the journey. Well, I can write it all out and I get to the very end and I don't want to read it because I put so much effort into it and I've looked at it so many times. I'm over it. So, it's like working out what the right balance.
Absolutely. And also, having that framework gives a freshness to it. Yeah. Because a new story or a new idea or a new angle might come to you, or you might find that you share that, in the moment, then you might not have thought of that as you were writing it out.
Yeah, and there might have been something happened to you on the way to your event or whatever that actually is very relevant, right? So it's good to have that flexibility. Yeah. Yeah. I know a lot of people would probably be thinking, but I don't have a message. I don't have anything that anyone would want to listen to. I've got my skills and that, but who cares? Who would want to listen to me? How do you help them find their message? And does everyone even have one?
Absolutely. I mean, well, I guess there's definitely different personalities and different people. My husband, for one, is the furthest thing from an entrepreneur, and he's like this simple, I want to just go to work. And, so I mean, of course, not everyone feels like they have a message that has to be shared in a big way. But if you're an entrepreneur, most likely you have a message that is important and needs to be shared. And so definitely, I really, a lot of people come and think, well, why would someone listen to me? And I really help them to see their story as their foundation. Right. And if you really tap into your story, and there's no other story like that. Yeah. And so you have to think, I have bookshelves just filled with books, and I love books, and I love self-help books and all that personal development. And I know that a lot of these books have a very similar message. They have very similar truths, but what makes them unique and makes them different and makes me want to buy them is because it's the uniqueness of who it is that's sharing that message.
Right.
They just see it in a slightly different way, and they have slightly different experiences and stories to share and insights to share because of their experiences and their story. So for people who are thinking, it's already been said, or I don't have anything new to say, make sure you don't discredit your life experience and your stories, because that's what makes you stand out and are set apart in the speaking arena, for sure.
Right. Yeah, and everybody has a story, like you said. It really is about having the courage to be able to share that story.
Absolutely. And the story is where everything comes from. I find your message, your purpose, your programs and offerings, the way you work with people comes from your story and your experiences. So it's really powerful to tap into that.
Great. And so we talked at the beginning about having courage to be able to step up and do this. Do you find that your biggest step in courage was actually at the beginning where you decided to launch this business and decided to do this, or have you since decided and had other times where you've needed to step up and have courage?
Every single time I do anything,
Right.
to go back to that whole process of getting the courage, and it honestly is every time I up-level my pricing, every time I launch a new program, every time I come up with a new idea, every time I hit enter to send out a video or a blog post or do an interview, every single action I take takes courage. It really does. Because it would be so much easier just to sit in my pajamas and read a book and go to the coffee shop with some girlfriends. But I have a bigger purpose. I have a bigger why, and it takes courage. It takes courage to keep taking action.
Yeah. And, you were talking about having, I guess, that authenticity of who you are and being able to show up as that. So in your personal life, have you got something where have you got a bucket list item that you want to cross off this year?
Yes, I have quite a few. One of the things that I'm like, I want to try, and it is kind of scary, is flyboarding. So you strap on this board, and it shoots water out of these kind of rocket things. You almost look like Iron Man. Yeah. And then it's like you float above the water, and it's really cool. It's like you're flying.
I've seen that in Kelowna. That's there, right?
That's right. That's where I'd be trying it.
Yeah, to me, that looks like so much fun. I would just love it.
Yes. But and a part of what I always, what scares me is like looking really ridiculous and really sucking at something. And so that, that whole idea of failure for me has always been there since the time I was a little kid. And so just trying new things and, this year getting out on the ski hill again terrifies me, but I do it. And strapping on those skates and doing those little things are what, even we went sliding down a volcano this year, so I already crossed one of those things up, and I tried surfing this year, so that's already, so there's lots of things, but I find when you do that, it gives you confidence in a different way to then do other things like the business stuff that helps, right? So I encourage people to do both, get out there and face in personal and in professional. Yeah.
And like as you were saying, the courage there, it resonates over to the other. But one of the things that you mentioned was the fear, or the words behind the fear, was that you were worried about looking, what was it, the exact word?
Looking silly, looking stupid. I don't know. Yeah. Looking like.
Yeah. I didn't want to put words in your mouth. So there's a fear of looking stupid, right? And I know I experienced that on the ski hill, but I really have moved in that. And I still have that fear, don't you worry, I'm not saying, but it really has taken quite a bit. Do you think that's the same with getting on the stage or your business, is that people are worried about looking stupid?
Absolutely. People don't want to have people judge them. People are worried about what people think about them, if, how they will look, if they're going to trip on the stairs, if they're going to stumble with the words. There's all of that kind of comes into play for sure.
Absolutely. So, Chantelle, helping people overcome like what's known as the number one fear in the world, I have no doubt that the people who work with you walk away feeling more confident. And when people are feeling more confident in themselves and more self-assured, it has a ripple effect. It may just be the ripple effect of when they're going home to their family, or it might be the ripple effect of the new things that they take on in their lives. So I feel that the work that you do with people has a huge ripple effect, even though it might be one-on-one. And I know the service that you offer people, you really go beyond and give the extras. Like, that is just so apparent in the work that you do. You're always there and going that much further to help the person. And knowing that that has a ripple effect, you really are a world changer in your business.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And that means so much to me, because I really try to make sure that people know that I care and that I'm there to help them succeed. So
that's
thank you.
Great. Yeah, well, I think you have succeeded at that, so thank you. Now, as everybody knows, each of our speakers is offering a gift to our audience. Could you share with us what your gift is?
For sure, for sure. It is a 4-part mini training series. So there's 4 videos and 4 training PDFs. And they're all about using speaking to grow your business and gain more connection, credibility, clients, and cash.
Wow, fantastic. 4, that's amazing. That's an incredible gift. So thank you very much.
Welcome.
We'll be having that on our emails out to everybody who's signed up to watch these interviews. Now, I'd also like to thank the audience for joining us and coming here and listening to us, and I hope that you all go and download Chantelle's gift, and thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Bye.